Hey everyone, I'm Meagan Marshall, director of the HCH Living Writers Series, here with my co-conspirator, Markel Tumlin.
Hello.
So today we wanted to give you a little recap of our wonderful series that we did last semester in the fall, and then a little sneak peek of what you can expect this semester, spring 2021. So last fall was our first experience fully online. We blazed new territory in terms of using Zoom and Facebook Live to conduct our Living Writers events. And I kind of feel like, Marco, maybe you can provide some insight to that. We could brush our shoulders off a little bit. We did
hmm
pretty well. I feel like it went actually wonderfully.
I thought it went really, really well, Megan. I think you deserve a lot of credit for making that happen. Uh, and so, yeah, I would just like to acknowledge all the good work you did in making it such a wonderful semester.
Oh, well,
I mean, I think we'd all rather be on campus instead of in another Zoom event. But all things considered, I thought it went really well. I thought the readings were all really great. The attendance was good. The engagement was good. The questions were good. I just really enjoyed every one of them.
yeah, I agree. And I feel like one of my favorite events was the event that we had with some of the authors and editors from Reclaiming Our Stories Too,
Oh, without question, yes.
a collection of narrative essays published by San Diego City Works Press. And one of the reasons why it was one of my favorite events, in addition to just being some great readings, was because it was a chance to bring the community together, right? I mean, we
Yes.
had the participants from mostly from San Diego City College, and then we had folks join us from UCSD, from Grossmont, from Palomar, and I feel like this virtual platform really allowed for us to do that. It would have been harder to put it together in that way had we been meeting in person. So there's a little silver lining to this whole Zoom thing.
Yeah, and I also thought that the readers at that event, well, they weren't all polished professional readers,
Right.
and there was such a realness and honesty to I mean, they're not that all the readings are honest and real, but there was maybe rawness is what I'm looking for. It was a little rawer, and I think it really touched. I could tell by the response that it got during the Q&A that it really touched the listeners quite a lot that night. It was very, very impressive, and I'm really glad I got to participate in that one.
Mhm. Right, agreed. And I think too, another cool thing about the Zoom forum is that participants are allowed to use that chat function. So I feel like some of the reactions and the thoughts that they're having based on the readings that are taking place or the Q&A, things that they wouldn't maybe normally verbalize in a live event, they instead were putting it into the chat. So I think that that was really cool too, just to kind of see those reactions, maybe more so than we would have seen or in a more transparent way than we would
Yeah.
experience in that, that sort of in-person event. So I think that that was really cool, particularly for that event as well.
I would agree.
And what do you think about what was like maybe another of your favorite
Well,
from?
the one right after that we closed the semester with, Kazim Ali, I loved that reading. I loved his work. I just loved the presence that he brought to his work. And once again, I thought that the response from the audience was quite, palpable because he had, it just really touched me in a way. So I really, really loved it. And then, of course, going back to the beginning of the semester last time, I always enjoy when we have an event where we have people from our own community that come in and read. And we had Sandra and Blas and the third. There were three readers at that one, right?
Yeah, April Wilder and then Matt
Right,
Taylor.
April Wild. That's right. Yes, and it was just I always enjoy those events.
Mhm. I agreed, and I feel like it was a wonderful way to close out the semester with poet and scholar Kazim Ali. He was just, I mean, his poetry delves into such interesting issues, and his reading and the Q&A was just sort of so insightful, but yet lighthearted as well. It
Yeah.
was a really nice balance, and I think too that was a great response with in the chat. And it was also a great way to kind of bring that community together because he teaches at UCSD. So we had some of his
Yes.
students and some of his colleagues show up to the event as well. So it was really cool to kind of see that.
And he has such an interesting biography. He really has so much to draw from because he's been so international and yet he seems so down to earth at the same time. And
Yeah.
so yeah, like I said, we were really lucky to see that one. So.
Mhm. Well, and I agree that I always am excited about highlighting the wonderful work of our very own, those SDSU affiliates. And so I also really enjoyed kicking off the semester with the MFA faculty event. And we're doing something a little bit similar this semester in that we are kicking off our reading series with an event with two SDSU MFA alums. And so let's go ahead and get started with that, our little sneak peek.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, our first event is happening on Wednesday, February 17th. And maybe I'll backtrack a little bit and just remind everyone that just like last semester, all events will be on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. and you can tune in via Zoom or Facebook Live. So on February 17th, we're going to be highlighting the work of poets and SDSU MFA program alums Betsy Luttrell and Ron Salisbury. So, and I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic because Betsy just graduated last year from the MFA program and was able to get her first book of poetry published, which is called This Woman is Haunted. And so, and then we kind of have a different perspective from Ron Salisbury, who is our very first San Diego poet laureate and has been writing and kind of working in the community for many years. His collection of poetry was published back in 2015. So I think that's going to be a really cool dynamic. Yes, thank you, Miss Desert Inn.
Yeah, and Betsy's book, I don't know, you might have mentioned this, but her book is called This Woman is Haunted. You might have said that already. And I read somewhere that it's narrative monologues, which I'm always intrigued by. So I'm looking forward to hearing those. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Ron, because I don't know that I've ever heard Ron read, but I remember about a year or so ago when he was announced as the first poet laureate of San Diego. And yeah, ever since I read that, I'm like, well, I need to see him now if I haven't before. So yeah, so I was very, very excited when I saw his name was added to the lineup for this semester.
Yeah, and I think it's a big deal that he was named our very first poet laureate of San Diego. And of course, it's well deserved because he has been really working hard in the community for many, many years. He works primarily with San Diego Writers Inc., but also does his own kind of workshops and will work with students on manuscripts. And so I'm also just interested to kind of hear about his project being the poet laureate, right? What is his vision for the poetry community in San Diego? So I think that it'll be cool to kind of hear from him on that wavelength.
It must be weird for him too to be have been named poet laureate and then immediately go into lockdown.
Right.
And so it's an interesting job to promote poetry when you can't really leave your house very much.
Exactly. He could have had a particular project in mind and had to abstract the whole thing because, maybe it was an in-person something.
Well, that would be something interesting for us to ask him about when he's here.
Yes, I think that's a good question. If anybody's watching, be sure to put that into the chat.
Write that down.
Yeah, February 17th. And so then we have our next event is on March 3rd with the poet and Cantamundo Regional Chair of California, Sarah Borjas. And her first book, which is called Heart Like a Window, Mouth Like a Cliff, won a 2020 American Book Award, which is pretty amazing. So she's going to be sharing some selections from that.
I like it because the title is two similes.
Yes. And yeah, her style is it's very visceral. It's very vivid, kind of narrative, like lends itself to maybe also like the spoken word genre. But she's a very dynamic poet. So I think that will be a great event.
Yeah, and I did just want to mention that I read that she was from Fresno and that Fresno is on their fourth poet laureate now. So I just, for whatever reason, Fresno's had poet laureates longer than San Diego, and they should be, we should just give them a little shout out for that, for a little shout out to Fresno for that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe just had some sort of trickle down effects moving from, Northern now to Southern California. And I mean, maybe she could speak a little bit about, Fresno's impact in terms of the world of poetics, because there are some other great poets who've come out of Fresno. So maybe it makes sense that they're now on their fourth.
Yeah, I think Juan Felipe Herrera taught there at CSU Fresno. I don't know that he was from there, but I know he lived there for quite a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I think I read that he's living somewhere else still in California, but not in Fresno anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's moved further south since then, but it's just interesting to consider where these kind of rich poetry communities begin to develop and then how that sort of expands from there. And then let's see, our next event is going to be actually just that next week, which is Wednesday, March 10th. And we are going to be featuring the work of another SDSU MFA alum, Thomas Tex Gresham, who will be reading from his book called Heck, Texas.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I remember running across that book several months ago before this series was scheduled, and the title just stuck in my brain. And so when I saw that this guy that wrote Heck, Texas was going to be here, I'm like, oh, I remember that. That title really stuck with me. And I love the fact, I'm really looking forward to, I haven't read the book yet, but I love the fact that our own is existing somewhere between Eraserhead and Slacker.
Yes.
And I mean, that just really intrigues me. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what a place between Eraserhead and Slacker sounds like. And I'm also very impressed with him because he just won that big how do you say it, Humanitas Award.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was for he's actually studying screenwriting now, I think, and he wrote a script and he won this award for the script, and the script just sounds really intriguing. So, you know, maybe he can talk about that or read a little bit of that too. But I know he's here mostly for Heck, Texas, but I mean, dude had two major things last year, a book published and a big award for a screenplay. So, man, you know, my beret is off to him.
Well, I agree. And Thomas was actually a student in my Living Writers class before he graduated. I think it was the semester before he graduated. And the writing that he was turning in the class was so innovative. And I mean, you can kind of see this style reflected in Heck, Texas. And you mentioned Stephen Paul Martin's review, right? But there's another it's blurbed on the back. I mean, of course, it's meant to be a bit flippant, tongue in cheek, from a writer-director, Joel Petrakis, who says, this book is trash. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to read that, right?
Oh, yeah. No, that'll be a great one. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Absolutely. So then we have on Wednesday, March 24th, the Laura Akuma Memorial Reading, featuring one of my favorite poets, Amy Nezekuma-Tatil. And she's been a big deal, but she just released a book, which is a collection of essays, actually, which is called World of Wonders, in praise of fireflies, whale sharks, and other astonishments, just last year in 2020. And it has already won a bunch of awards. It's a New York Times best-selling book. It's, I think, sold out now on Amazon. So
it was a Barnes and Noble Book of the Year.
Yes,
yeah.
Barnes and Noble Book of the Year.
Yeah.
So she's.
I mean, I saw the list. I couldn't even remember because there's a long list of all the year-ends lists that it made. I mean, this book was very, very well received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finalist for the Kirkus Prize, and so the kind of list goes on and on. And her earlier collections of poetry also very well decorated. And she's read for the Living Writers Series before, and she's just very, again, kind of like Kazem Ali, dynamic, eclectic in terms of style, experience, and genre, but also very down to earth and just a really, really engaging speaker. So I'm also definitely looking forward to her event.
Oh yeah.
And then now we're moving on to April. On April 7th, we have another great poet, also Cantamundo fellow, Michael Torres. And so he's going to be reading from his debut collection, which is called An Incomplete List of Names. And this is also a decorated book. And
I noticed it was an NPR best book.
Yeah,
last year. So NPR recognized that, which I thought was quite impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was selected by Raquel Salas Rivera for the National Poetry Series. And it's similar a little bit in style to, I think, Sarah Borjas' work, in that it's kind of narrative, maybe lends itself to the spoken word genre, but also equally engaging on the page.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the people watching now are familiar with Jimmy Santiago Baca, and his review of this book was just glowing. And I don't have an excerpt from it in front of me, but when I saw that review, and he said it was like one of the best books he had read since he could remember. And I'm like, well, yeah, I wish I'd written something that he'd say that about. So, but
I know.
yeah, anyway, that's going to be another really good. I mean, this is just a stellar lineup in the spring. So,
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up that review. Actually, I have the excerpt. I think Baca says, "I love this book more than I have any other book in a long time.
yes,
Celebrating
yeah,
our
that's the one.
duality." Yes. So, and of course, right, if you get a review like that from Baca, you've made it. You've
Yeah,
made it.
you want that on the cover of your book.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
And then we're going to finish out the semester with another SDSU beloved author, Harold Jaffe, who's going to be sharing some excerpts from a new work that is coming out actually next month, which is called Brute: Writings on Art and Artists. And I feel like if you are in the world of fiction, or if you know anything about SDSU, you already know something about Hal Jaffe,
Oh, yeah.
right? Yes, and he's read for us a few times for Living Writers, and his work is always innovative, engaging, and kind of, and groundbreaking in terms of really inventing a style, docufiction.
Mhm.
And so I
Well,
think,
but I'm really curious about this book because of the subject matter. I mean, he's written about artists before. I think he had a whole book about Madonna one time or something. So, he's written about other artists, but some of not everyone who's going to be in this book would you consider an artist. I saw a list of some of the topics that he's including, and it included, the Black Panthers and Greta Thunberg, in addition to people like Nina Simone and Marlon Brando. So it's a pretty wide-ranging group of topics that I think he's going to be addressing. And I'll just be interested to see how it compares to the docufiction and the other stylistic things he's done. But I know it's going to be interesting because it always is.
right. And I remember having taken classes with him before and being familiar with his work. He really, he brings in the work of different artists all the time. And like you said, not like ones that are always in the mainstream. And I remember one of the last times he read for us, and this was an in-person event, he asked if, as people were coming in, we could play some songs from Chet Baker, who is that, I mean, Chet Baker, yeah, the jazz musician, had a very troubled life, but extremely, extremely talented. And as a way to sort of set the mood for the reading that he was about to give. And so I think you can see how, the kind of artists and art have always played a role in influencing his own work. So I'm really interested to see if that sort of comes off in this collection.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, so those are all of our wonderful events that you can expect for the Spring 2021 Virtual Living Writers Series. If you want to know more, please visit the SDSU MFA website. You'll find the full listing of our events there, and also the links for the Zoom sessions that you will need to register for if you'd like to join us via Zoom. And also, if you have some time, check us out on YouTube, the HCH Living Writers Series on YouTube. You can see all of our events from the past semester, as well as some really cool videos that were made by students enrolled in the Living Writers class in response to some of the artists, some of the authors that we encountered last semester. So lots of good and exciting stuff for you to check out while still in quarantine and social distancing. Thank you again to Markel. I couldn't do this without Markel, y'all. So, if I could give him the little
Oh, well, thank you, Megan. You're too kind.
emoji. And we look forward to seeing you all for this next semester of really great authors.
Yeah, I hope everybody stays safe, and looking forward to seeing your faces again, even if it's just your avatar. I'm just looking forward to those. So
Yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
thanks so much for your time.
All right, thanks, y'all.